Caleb Thornton rode into Promise Creek 4 months gone from timber country, his horse's breath fogging the January air. Ice cracked under hooves. The frozen creek sang its winter song, sharp and lonesome. He tied up outside the saloon. Wind bit through wool. The doors scraped on hinges stiff with cold. Inside, tobacco smoke hung low. Men turned. Grins split bearded faces. The postmaster clapped his shoulder. "You're out." "Heard your bride arrived safe, 3 months back. Fine woman, that one." Caleb froze. Laughter rippled through the room like a stone dropped in still water. The grocer leaned in. "She settles accounts prompt. Real manager. Your wife." The words stuck in Caleb's throat. Wife. He'd never sent for any bride. The bartender slid whiskey across scarred wood. Coin clinked. On the house, every man deserves one wedding drink, even if he missed the proposing part. Behind the bar, a letter. Caleb's signature. A woman's script. "She's at your ranch now, waiting." The ride to the ranch took an hour. Snow lay heavy on pine branches. His gut churned worse than bad whiskey. The barn came into view first. New shingles on the roof. The fence line stood straight, no gaps where wind used to whistle through. Chickens scratched in a coop he didn't remember building. Caleb dismounted. His boots crunched on frozen ground. The cabin door opened. A woman stepped onto the porch. Auburn hair pinned neat, wool dress patched but clean. Her hands were red from work, cracked at the knuckles. "Mr. Thornton." Her voice was steady as stone. "I've been expecting you." His world tilted. She didn't smile, didn't flinch, just stood there like she belonged. "Who the hell are you?" "Eliza Pemberton." She gestured toward the door. "Your parents are inside. They'll want to see you." The smell of chicken soup drifted out, rich, warm. His stomach betrayed him with a growl. He pushed past her. Inside, the cabin glowed. Fire crackled in the hearth. His father sat in the rocker, a quilt over his lap. His mother lay on the cot by the wall, thinner than he remembered, but her eyes were bright. "Caleb," his mother's voice broke. "You're home." He crossed to her, knelt. Her hand found his face. Cold fingers, papery skin. "Mama." The word came rough. "I knew you'd come." She smiled. "And you've met Eliza." He glanced back. The woman stood in the doorway, snow dusting her shoulders. "Met her? I don't know her." His father coughed. "Sit down, son. There's explaining to do." Caleb didn't sit. "Town says she's my bride." "She is?" His mother's voice was firm. "I never sent for any bride." Silence filled the cabin like smoke. Eliza moved to the stove. She ladled soup into bowls. The scrape of metal on iron. The sound of someone who knew where everything was. "Your letters were kind," she said quietly. "You spoke of the ranch, your parents, the winters here." "I didn't write any letters." She set a bowl before him. Steam rose, carrying the scent of thyme and black pepper. "You wrote about how the creek freezes in January, how your father taught you to split wood, how your mother makes bread every Sunday." Every detail was right. He looked at his mother. She wouldn't meet his eyes. "Mama?" "Eat first," his father said. "Then we'll talk." The soup was good, better than anything he'd made in 4 months of timber camps. He ate in silence. Eliza served his parents, then took a bowl for herself and sat on the low stool by the hearth. Outside, wind moaned through the eaves. His mother broke the quiet. "I wrote the letters." Caleb set down his spoon. It clattered against the bowl. "You what?" "You were gone so long. We were failing." Her voice shook. "I couldn't keep the ranch alone. Your father's lungs are bad. I had no strength left." "So you found a stranger?" "I found help." His mother's eyes filled. "She came when we needed her most." Eliza stared into her soup. "And you just came?" Caleb turned to her, knowing it was a lie. "I thought it was real." Her voice was soft but steady. "Your mother's letters were signed with your name. I had no reason to doubt." "Then why stay when you got here?" She looked up. Her eyes were gray, tired, but unflinching. "Because they were dying." The word hung in the air. Caleb stood, walked to the window. Snow fell in thick silence. His reflection stared back, a stranger in his own house. By the door, an axe leaned against the wall. Old Temperance. His father's axe. The handle was worn smooth from decades of use. "She split wood with that," his father said quietly. "Every morning, fed the chickens, repaired the barn, kept us alive." Caleb's throat tightened. "We have papers," his father continued. "Legal ones. They're in the tin box under the hearthstone. Your inheritance is secure, son. We made sure of it. His mother coughed. She tried to hide it in her fist, but Caleb saw the red stain on her handkerchief. She tucked it away quickly. "Tell him about the box, Samuel," she whispered. His father nodded. "There's things you need to know. About the land, about what we've done to keep it." Eliza stood. "I'll fetch more wood." She took the axe and slipped out into the cold. The door closed behind her with a soft thud. Caleb looked at his parents, two old people who'd gambled everything on a stranger's kindness. "What have you done?" he asked. His father's hands shook. "What we had to." Caleb couldn't sleep. The cabin was warm, but his thoughts stayed cold. He lay on the floor by the hearth, listening to his father's wheezing breath, his mother's cough, the woman sleeping on the narrow bench by the wall, wrapped in her shawl. Before dawn, he rose. Gray light crept through the window. The fire had burned to embers. He added wood, careful not to wake anyone. The logs shifted with a soft hiss. He needed answers. His mother's desk sat in the corner, a small writing table his father had built years ago. Caleb opened the drawer. The hinges creaked. Inside papers, receipts, his mother's careful record-keeping, and beneath them letters. He pulled one out. The paper was thin, worn from folding and unfolding. His name signed at the bottom, in his mother's shaking script. "Dear Miss Pemberton, the ranch is quiet this time of year. Snow covers everything like a blanket. My father taught me to read the weather by how the pines bend. My mother makes bread every Sunday, even when flour is scarce. I hope you are well. I think of you often. Yours, Caleb Thornton." His hands shook. He pulled out another, and another, a dozen letters, maybe more, all in his mother's handwriting, all signed with his name. The smell of ink rose from the pages, old and faded. Behind him, floorboards creaked. He turned. Eliza stood in the doorway, her shawl clutched around her shoulders. Her eyes were wide. "I thought you knew," she whispered. "You thought I knew?" His voice was too loud. "You thought I'd lie to you? Your mother said you approved, that you were too busy with timber work to write yourself. And you believed that?" She flinched. "I wanted to believe it." The cabin stirred. His father sat up in the rocker. His mother tried to rise from the cot, but couldn't manage it. Caleb crossed to them, letters gripped in his fist. He slammed them on the table. The sound cracked through the room like a shot. "Explain this." His mother's face crumpled. "Caleb, explain it." She looked away. Tears ran down her weathered cheeks. The smell of sickness clung to her, sour and familiar. "I was dying," she said. "We both were. You were gone for months at a time. We had no one. So you found someone by lying?" "I found someone by praying." Her voice broke. "I wrote those letters because I couldn't watch you come home to ashes and graves. I couldn't let this ranch die with us." His father coughed, a deep rattling sound. "Your mother did what she thought right. By forging my name? By bringing a stranger here under false promises?" "She's no stranger now," his father said. "She's kept us alive." Caleb turned to Eliza. She stood very still, her face pale in the dim light. "Why did you stay?" he demanded. "When you got here and saw they were old and sick, why didn't you leave?" "Because I know what it's like to be left behind." Her voice was quiet, but it cut through his anger like a blade. "My husband died of fever 2 years ago," she said. "The town helped at first, brought food, offered prayers, then the pity turned cold. They wanted me gone. A widow with no children is just a mouth to feed." She met his eyes. "When I got here and saw your mother couldn't stand, saw your father could barely breathe, I knew what would happen if I left, the same thing that almost happened to me." Silence filled the cabin. Outside, wind howled. Snow hissed against the window. "And the land?" Caleb's voice cracked. "What about the land?" His father looked away. "Samuel." Caleb's gut twisted. "What about the land?" "We signed papers," his father said finally. "For her safety." "What kind of papers?" "Legal ones." His father's hands trembled in his lap. "If anything happens to us, the land goes to her, as a marriage settlement." The room spun. "You gave her my inheritance?" "We gave her security." His mother's voice was fierce despite her weakness. "If you marry her, it's yours together. If you don't—" She didn't finish. Caleb understood. If he refused the marriage, Eliza's improvements at the barn, the coop, the fence, might all be contested. And if she had no legal claim, the land would be vulnerable. To who? The question came cold and clear. His father answered it. A man came by last month, railroad agent, said he was looking to buy homesteads. What man? Huxley, Garrett Huxley. His father coughed again. Said he'd heard we were struggling, offered to help. Caleb's blood ran cold. You didn't sell. No, but he bought something else. His father's face was gray. He bought our mortgage note from the bank in Helena. How much? $800. The number sat heavy in the air. Eliza's face had gone white. You didn't tell me. Didn't want to worry you, his father said. Figured Caleb would come home before it mattered. And now? Caleb's voice was hollow. His mother reached for him. Her hand was cold as ice. Now you have a choice, son. Marry her and fight together, or let pride take everything your father and I built. Outside, the wind screamed. Inside, nobody spoke. Eliza broke the silence. I'll leave. Her voice was steady. Before I cost you your birthright, Mr. Thornton, just let me see your mother through the winter. She didn't wait for an answer. She took her shawl and walked out into the storm. Caleb found her an hour later, sitting on a stump near the creek. Snow fell around her in soft silence. Her shawl was thin. She'd be frozen through soon. He'd brought the heavy coat from the cabin. You'll catch your death, he said. She didn't turn. That'd solve your problem, wouldn't it? He draped the coat over her shoulders anyway. For a long moment, neither spoke. The creek made a faint trickling sound beneath its shell of ice. Winter held everything in its grip, but the thaw was coming. You could hear it in the way the ice shifted, settling. Show me, he said finally. Show you what? What you've done here, the improvements my father mentioned. She looked up at him. Her eyes were red from cold, or maybe from crying, hard to tell. Why? Because I need to understand what's at stake. She stood. The coat fell from her shoulders, but she caught it and wrapped it tight. The wool smelled of wood smoke and horse sweat. They walked back to the cabin in silence. Inside, she went to the small shelf above the stove and pulled down a book. Not a Bible. A ledger. She set it on the table and opened it. The pages were covered in neat columns. Every penny accounted for. I kept track of everything, she said. Your parents had $23 when I arrived. I brought 40 of my own. Her finger traced down the page. Barn shingles, $12. Fence posts and wire, 18. Chickens and feed, 7. Glass for the broken window, $2.50. Nails, tools, seed for spring. It adds up. Caleb leaned closer. The ink smelled sharp, almost metallic. The numbers were clear. No guesswork. Every purchase dated and sourced. At the bottom of the last page, a total, $480. The Homestead Act, she said quietly. Your father explained it. You need $500 in improvements to keep the claim. Proved by April 30th. $20 short. Where'd you get the money? He asked. I sold everything I owned. My husband's tools, our furniture, the horse and wagon. She met his eyes. I didn't come here to steal, Mr. Thornton. I came because your mother begged, and because I had nowhere else to go. He studied the ledger again, the careful handwriting, the precision. She wasn't a liar, she was a survivor. I didn't mean to trap you, she said. I thought you'd want this. A partner, someone to help carry the weight. Before he could answer, hooves sounded outside. They both turned. Through the window, Caleb saw a horse and buggy. Doc Harlan climbed down, his black bag in hand. Caleb opened the door. Doc. Caleb, heard you were back. Doc Harlan stomped snow off his boots. Came to check on your mother. She's inside. Doc nodded to Eliza. Miss Pemberton, good to see you. She returned the nod, but said nothing. While Doc examined his mother, Caleb stepped outside. The cold bit through his shirt. He needed air, needed to think. Doc joined him a few minutes later. Her lungs are failing, Doc said without preamble. Won't last the spring. The words hit like a fist. How long? Weeks, maybe a month. Doc's face was grim. Your father's not far behind. That cough won't ease. Caleb stared at the mountains. They stood silent against the gray sky, indifferent to human suffering. There's something else, Doc said. Been meaning to tell you. Man came through town last week. Railroad agent. Garrett Huxley. The name tightened Caleb's jaw. What about him? He was asking questions. About your land, your family, how much timber you had, whether you'd been keeping up with improvements. Doc paused. Seemed real interested in whether you'd be back before spring. Why? Can't say for sure, but I've seen men like him before. They don't ask questions out of kindness. Caleb's mind raced. The mortgage note, the improvement clause, Huxley buying up homesteads, it wasn't coincidence. "There's a judge," Doc said. "Marion Keats, circuit judge, out of Helena. He'll be through in a few weeks. Might be worth talking to him about those papers your father signed. Make sure everything's legal and proper." "You think it's not?" "I think Huxley's the kind of man who bends law to his advantage. And I think your father signed those papers when he was desperate." Doc put a hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Get ahead of it, son, before it's too late." After Doc left, Caleb walked the property line. The snow was deep, but he knew every foot of this land. His father had walked it with him as a boy, teaching him the boundaries. Near the creek, his boot hit something hard. He bent down, brushed away snow, metal, cold and unyielding, a survey stake. Brass cap stamped with letters, H & Co., Huxley & Company. His blood went cold. He followed the creek line, found another stake, and another. Someone had been here, marking the land, claiming it. He returned to the cabin as dusk fell. Inside, Eliza was serving soup to his parents. The smell of onions and salt pork filled the air. She looked up when he entered. He held out the steak. "Found this by the creek." Her face paled. "Railroad?" she asked. "Yes." His father's spoon clattered into his bowl. "They've already surveyed?" "Looks like it." The room fell silent except for the fire's crackle. Eliza set down the ladle. Her hands were shaking. "What does it mean?" she asked. Caleb met her eyes. "It means we're not just fighting to keep this land. We're fighting to prove it was ever ours at all." 3 days passed. The cold deepened. Ice groaned on the creek at night, settling into its winter sleep. Caleb split wood. He worked until his hands bled, until the axe felt like an extension of his rage. Eliza kept to the cabin, caring for his parents. They circled each other like wary animals. On the 4th day, a buggy arrived. Caleb heard it before he saw it. The jingle of harness bells, out of place in the mountain quiet. He set down the axe and wiped his hands on his pants. The buggy was polished black, the horse well fed and groomed. A man climbed down, brushing snow from his coat. He wore a bowler hat and gloves, city clothes. "Mr. Thornton?" The man smiled. His teeth were too white, too even. "Garrett Huxley. I represent the Montana Central Railroad." Caleb didn't offer his hand. "I know who you are." "Then you know I'm here as a friend." Huxley's smile didn't waver. "I heard you were back. Thought we might talk business." "Not interested. Hear me out." Huxley gestured at the land around them. "This is hard country. Your father's sick. Your mother's dying. You've been gone 4 months at a time, just to keep food on the table. Get to the point." "The point is, I'm offering you a way out." Huxley reached into his coat and pulled out a folded paper. $1,200, cash, for the full claim. You could start fresh somewhere easier, somewhere that doesn't break a man's back just to survive. $1,200. 3 years of timber wages, maybe more. Caleb's throat went dry. "That's generous," he said carefully. "It is." Huxley's eyes were sharp beneath the brim of his hat. "More than generous, considering the circumstances." "What circumstances?" "Well," Huxley's tone turned sympathetic. "That wife of yours, fine woman, I'm sure, but these improvements she's made." He glanced at the barn, the fence. "Paperwork can be fickle out here, especially when the legal landowner wasn't present to authorize the work." The threat was clear. Caleb's jaw tightened. "The improvements are documented." "Oh, I don't doubt it. Miss Pemberton strikes me as thorough." Huxley folded the paper and tucked it away. "But documentation only matters if it's recognized, and recognition requires the right perspective." Behind them, the cabin door opened. Eliza stood on the porch. She'd heard. Huxley tipped his hat to her. "Ma'am." She didn't respond. "Think about it, Mr. Thornton," Huxley said, climbing back into his buggy. $1,200. Freedom from all this. He gestured at the mountains, the snow, the dying land. Or you can gamble on paperwork and a woman you barely know. The buggy pulled away. Harness bells faded into silence. Eliza came down the steps. Her face was pale. "He'll ruin us," she said. "Won't he?" Caleb didn't answer. He couldn't. Inside, his father was coughing. The sound rattled through the thin walls. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Caleb lay by the fire, staring at the ceiling. His mother's breathing was shallow. His father's cough came in wet, painful bursts. $1,200. He could take the money, get his parents to a doctor in Helena, start over somewhere flat and easy where land didn't fight back. But the ranch was his father's life. His grandfather's before that, 3 generations of Thorntons built into every log and stone. His eyes drifted to the hearthstone. His father's words echoed. The tin box under the hearthstone. Your inheritance is secure. Caleb sat up. The cabin was dark except for the fire's glow. Everyone slept. He crossed to the hearth. The stones were old, fitted tight. He found the edge of the loose one and pried. It came free with a scrape of stone on stone. Beneath it, a hollow. And inside, a metal box. Tin, rusted at the edges. The smell of damp earth rose up. He pulled it out, set it on the table. The latch was stiff. He worked it open. Inside, papers. He unfolded the first one carefully. The firelight made the ink dance. A deed, legal and official, stamped with the territorial seal. His breath stopped. The land. 160 acres. Transferred from Samuel and Ruth Thornton to Eliza Pemberton. His hands shook. The date was 3 months old. Signed the week she arrived. As marriage settlement pending union. The words blurred. They'd given her the land. His inheritance. Rage rose in his throat, hot and choking. He grabbed the next paper. Another deed. Older. The ink faded but still legible. His parents' names, dated 1837, 50 years ago. The original homestead claim. A small piece of paper fluttered free. He caught it. A note. His father's handwriting, shaky but clear. Land means nothing without family to keep it. We chose family. Caleb's vision blurred. Behind him, floorboards creaked. He turned. His father stood in the doorway, hunched and frail. His nightshirt hung loose. His face was gray. You found it, his father said. You gave her everything. Caleb's voice cracked. Without asking me. We gave her security. And we gave you a chance. His father moved slowly to the table. He picked up the old deed, the one from 1837. Your grandfather fought for this land, died on it. Your mother and I raised you on it, and when you came of age, you left. I left to keep it alive, to earn money. You left because you couldn't stand being second. His father's eyes were hard. Your brother died young, and you spent your whole life thinking we loved him more, so you ran to the mountains where you didn't have to compete with a ghost. The words struck like a blow. That's not, it is. His father's voice was gentle now. And we let you, because grief makes fools of us all. But son, this land doesn't care who we loved more. It cares who shows up, who stays, who bleeds for it. Caleb looked at the deed, Eliza's name in careful script. She showed up, his father continued. When we were dying, and you were gone, she showed up, so yes, we signed the land to her because the Homestead Act protects widows who marry into claims. It was the only way to make sure the railroad couldn't touch it if we died before you came home. You could have waited. We didn't have time to wait. His father's voice broke. Look at us, Caleb. We're dying. The fire crackled. Outside, wind moaned. The deed says pending union, his father said. You marry her, it's yours together. You refuse. He shrugged. Then she has the choice. Keep it or sell it, but at least it stays out of Huxley's hands. Caleb stared at the papers, his whole life written in ink on fading parchment. She has the power now, he said bitterly. Not me. She has partnership to offer, his father corrected, if you're man enough to take it. His father shuffled back to bed, coughing. Caleb sat alone with the tin box. Inside, beneath the deeds, was one more item, a ring, gold, worn thin. His grandmother's ring, the one his mother had worn for 50 years. He held it up to the firelight. The metal was warm, as if it remembered skin. Outside, the first crack of dawn touched the mountains, and Caleb understood finally what he'd lost by running, not the land, the chance to be chosen. Morning came cold and clear. The sun turned the snow to diamonds. Caleb didn't go inside. He took Old Temperance from where it leaned by the door and walked to the woodpile. He needed to think, needed to move, needed something his hands could control. The first log split clean. The sound cracked across the valley, sharp as a gunshot. The smell of fresh pine filled his lungs. He set another log, swung. The axe bit deep. Again. His breath came in clouds. Sweat froze on his collar. His hands burned where blisters had formed, but he didn't stop. Behind him, the cabin door opened. He didn't turn. Footsteps crunched in the snow, then the sound of wood being moved, metal scraping against metal. He glanced back. Eliza stood at the second chopping block. She'd taken his father's smaller axe. She set a log, tested the weight of the blade, and swung. The log split. She set another. They worked in silence. The rhythm became a conversation. His strike, her answer. The valley echoed with the sound of two people fighting the same cold. An hour passed, maybe two. The woodpile grew. Caleb's arms shook. His shirt clung to his back despite the cold. He set down the axe, bent over, hands on his knees, gulping air. Eliza stopped too. She lowered her axe and leaned against the stump. Her face was flushed. Her breath came hard. "Your mother taught me," she said. Her voice carried across the space between them. "Said you'd need help come spring." Caleb straightened. "You didn't have to learn." "Yes, I did." She looked at the cabin. Smoke rose from the chimney in a thin, steady line. "They were dying when I got here. Your father couldn't lift an axe. Your mother couldn't stand. If I didn't learn, we'd all freeze." He studied her, the set of her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the axe handle, confident but not careless. She wasn't playing at this. She'd earned every callus. "You're good at it," he admitted. "I'm good at surviving." She met his eyes. "Had a lot of practice." They sat on adjacent stumps. The snow around them was littered with wood chips and bark. The smell of resin hung sweet in the cold air. "Tell me about him," Caleb said. "Your husband." She was quiet for a long moment. A crow called from the pines. The sound echoed, lonely. "Thomas," she said finally. "We had 3 years together. Not enough, but more than some get." "How'd he die?" "Fever. Came on fast." Her voice was steady, but her hands twisted in her lap. "1 week he was planting corn. The next he was burning up. By the 3rd week I was burying him." Caleb looked down. Ice crystals had formed on his gloves, tiny and perfect. "Town helped at first," she continued. "But help turns to pity, and pity turns cold when you can't pay it back. They wanted me gone. Wanted the land for someone who could work it. A widow with no children." She shrugged. "I'm just a problem waiting to happen." "So you answered a letter from a stranger." I answered a letter from a man who sounded lonely." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Turns out we both were." The sun climbed higher. The light turned the mountains gold. "I'll leave," Eliza said. "Before I cost you your birthright, Mr. Thornton. Just let me see your mother through the winter. Once She couldn't finish. "Once it's done, I'll go. You can contest the deed. Say I tricked your parents. Town will believe it. They already think I'm some kind of schemer." "And go where?" "Somewhere." She stood, brushed snow from her skirt. "There's always somewhere." He watched her walk back toward the cabin. Her steps were sure, despite the uneven ground. She'd learned this land in 3 months, learned it better than he knew his own heart. At the door, she paused. "Your mother loves you," she said without turning. Everything she did out of love. Not control, not manipulation, just love. I hope you can see that. She went inside. Caleb sat alone. The axe lay at his feet. Old Temperance. His father had named it after his grandmother, who'd lived through 3 hard winters and raised 7 children without complaint. Temperance, balance, endurance. His father had given it to Eliza, not just the tool, the legacy. He picked up the axe. The handle was worn smooth where her hands had gripped it. You could see the pattern. Smaller hands, determined. Behind him, hooves sounded on the frozen trail. He turned. A rider approached. Older man, gray beard, wool coat. He rode like someone who'd spent a lifetime in the saddle. Caleb stood. "Can I help you?" "Looking for Caleb Thornton." "That's me." The man dismounted. "Judge Marion Keats, circuit judge out of Helena. Doc Harlan sent word you might need to talk." Relief washed through Caleb like warm water. "Yes, sir, I do." They walked to the cabin. Inside, Eliza was tending the fire. She looked up, saw the judge, and stepped back to pep it back. "Ma'am." The judge nodded to her. "Miss Pemberton, I presume?" "Yes, sir." "I've heard about you." The judge's tone was neutral. "Heard you've been managing this place, keeping these folks alive." "I've done what I could." The judge turned to Caleb. "And I've heard about Garrett Huxley sniffing around. That's why I came early, before my circuit was due." Caleb's pulse quickened. "What do you know about him?" "More than he'd like." The judge set his hat on the table. The brim was stained with salt and sweat. "But first, let's talk about this deed, and whether it'll hold when the railroad comes calling." Outside, the sun reached its peak. Inside, the real fight was about to begin. The judge spread papers across the table. The deed, the mortgage note, Eliza's ledger. His finger traced the lines of text, pausing at key phrases. "This deed is legal," he said. "Homestead Act of 1862, amended 1872. A widow or prospective bride can be granted land as marriage settlement. Your parents did it right." Caleb felt something loosen in his chest. "But?" he asked, because there was always a but. "But the improvement clause is real. $500 by April 30th, or the claim reverts to federal land. Then anyone can file." The judge looked up. "And I'd bet my last dollar Garrett Huxley has papers ready to file come May 1st. Eliza's voice was small. "We're $20 short." "Then you need $20. The judge closed the ledger. "Timber sale would do it, or livestock, something that can be documented and witnessed." "I have timber cut," Caleb said. "Been saving it for spring sale." "Then sell it before April 30th. Get witnesses. File the completion with the territorial office." The judge stood. "And marry this woman, because if you don't, that deed becomes clouded. Huxley will tie it up in court until you run out of money to fight." He put on his hat. "One more thing," the judge said. "Huxley's been busy. He's not just after your land. He's been buying up every failing homestead from here to Butte. 7 so far." 7? Caleb's gut tightened. 7. And you know what he's done with them? The judge's eyes were hard. "Nothing. They sit empty. No improvements, no settlers, just empty land with his name on the deed." "Why?" "Because he's not farming. He's speculating. Railroad's planning a route through here in the next 5 years. When they do, land values will jump. He'll sell to the railroad at 10 times what he paid." The judge opened the door. Cold air rushed in. "He's betting you'll break. That pride or poverty will make you sell. Don't give him the satisfaction." After the judge left, Caleb stood at the window. The mountains held the last light, purple and gold. Behind him, Eliza cleared the table, the soft clink of papers being stacked. "I need to go to town," he said. "Now?" "Need to hear what people are saying. Need to know where we stand." "I'll come with you." "No," he turned. "Let me do this alone." Her face closed. She nodded once and went back to tending his mother. The ride to Promise Creek took an hour. Dusk fell, turning the world gray and cold. Lights glowed in windows, smoke rose from chimneys, the smell of cooking meat drifted on the wind. He tied his horse outside the saloon. Inside, warmth hit him like a wall. The stove glowed red. Men clustered at tables, playing cards, drinking whiskey. The air was thick with tobacco smoke and the sour smell of old beer. Conversation stopped when he entered. The bartender nodded. "Caleb?" "Whiskey." The glass slid across the bar. Caleb drank it in one swallow. The burn felt good. Behind him someone laughed, low and mean. "Heard you got yourself a wife, Thornton." Caleb didn't turn. "Heard she's been running your place while you were gone." Another voice. "Must be nice, having a woman do a man's work." Heat crawled up Caleb's neck. "Heard she's got the deed now." A third man. "Ain't that something? Woman owns what a man built." Caleb set down the glass. It clicked against the wood. He turned. 5 men sat at the corner table. Hired hands from the ranches north of town. Men who worked for wages and drank them away come Saturday. "Something you want to say to my face?" Caleb's voice was level. The first man grinned. Tobacco stained his teeth. "Just wondering how it feels, being managed." "Managed?" "She's got the land, got the say. You're just the fellow who shows up when the heavy lifting's done." The man leaned back. "That's what we call managed." Caleb's fists clenched. The saloon door opened. Reverend Price stepped inside. He was a thin man, gray-haired, with eyes that missed nothing. "Evening, gentlemen." His voice cut through the smoke. "Sounds like we're having a spirited discussion." "Just talking, Reverend." The hired hand's grin faded. "Talking." The Reverend crossed to the bar. "About a woman who's kept 2 dying people alive through winter. About a woman who's worked from dawn to dusk for 3 months asking nothing in return. That kind of talking?" Silence. "Or the kind of talking that tears down what should be lifted up." The Reverend's voice was soft, but it carried weight. "The kind that makes a man feel small by making others smaller?" The hired hand looked away. The Reverend turned to Caleb. "Walk with me." Outside, the cold was sharp and clean after the saloon's thick air. Stars burned overhead, hard and bright. "Don't let them get to you," the Reverend said. "They're scared." "Scared of what?" "Of what she represents." The Reverend pulled his coat tighter. "A woman who doesn't need permission, who doesn't wait for a man to save her. She just acts. They see that, and it threatens something in them they don't want to name." They walked toward the church. Its white walls glowed in the starlight. "But here's what matters," the Reverend continued. "Are you going to let the railroad buy what she built? Because that's what Huxley's counting on. He's counting on your pride being bigger than your sense." "It's not about pride, isn't it?" The Reverend stopped. "She's offering partnership, equal weight, equal say. But you're stuck on what your father gave her instead of what she's earned. That's pride, son, pure and simple." Caleb's jaw tightened. "She doesn't need you to save her," the Reverend said. "She needs you to stand beside her. There's a difference." Caleb rode home in darkness. The stars wheeled overhead. His breath frosted the air. When he reached the cabin, lamplight glowed in the window. Inside, the judge sat at the table with a ledger open before him. Not Eliza's ledger, a different one. Caleb came in, stamping snow from his boots. "Where'd you go?" the judge asked. "Town. Needed to think." "Good, because while you were gone, I did some thinking too." The judge tapped the ledger. "I brought this from Helena. It's a record of land transfers. Every homestead Huxley's bought." Caleb sat down. The pages were filled with names, dates, amounts. 7 homesteads, the judge said. "All purchased in the last 18 months. Total investment $4,000. His finger moved down the page. "Total improvements made after purchase, 0. He's leaving them empty? "Empty and waiting for the railroad route to be announced." The judge looked up. "That's fraud, Caleb. Using homestead law to speculate instead of settle. It's against the territorial charter." "Can you prove it?" "I can raise questions. Loud enough questions that the railroad might not want to be associated with him, especially if those questions get asked in public." The judge smiled. It wasn't kind. "Say, at a public land sale, or a timber auction, where the whole town's watching." Caleb's pulse quickened. "You're saying—" "I'm saying Huxley's leverage only works if nobody knows what he's doing. Expose him, and he's just a speculator breaking territorial law. His commission dries up, his schemes fall apart." The judge closed the ledger. "He's betting you'll choose pride over partnership. Prove him wrong, and he's got nothing." Outside, the wind shifted. Warmer air moved down from the mountains, the smell of coming thaw. Inside, for the first time since he'd come home, Caleb saw a path forward. The judge left at dawn. Caleb stood on the porch and watched him ride into the gray morning. The smell of thaw was stronger now. Ice dripped from the eaves. The sound was steady, patient. Inside, his father's cough had worsened. Caleb found Doc Harlan already there when he came in. The doctor's face was grim. "How long?" Caleb asked quietly. "Tonight, maybe tomorrow." Doc closed his bag. "His lungs are drowning. Nothing I can do now but keep him comfortable." His father lay in bed, eyes closed. His breath rattled like stones in a jar. His mother sat beside him, holding his hand. She was so thin now, almost transparent. Caleb knelt by the bed. "Papa." His father's eyes opened, cloudy but aware. "Son," the word came out wet. "You still here?" "I'm here." "Good." His father's grip tightened on his mother's hand. "Don't leave her alone. Promise me." "I promise." "Not your mother." His father's eyes shifted to Eliza standing in the doorway. "Her. The woman who saved us. Don't let pride make you a fool." Caleb's throat closed. His father coughed. Blood flecked his lips. The smell of sickness was heavy in the air, sour and inevitable. "The land's just dirt, son. Means nothing if you're alone on it." His father's voice faded. "We learned that too late. Don't make the same mistake." By evening, his father was gone. They buried him the next morning. The ground was still frozen, so they laid him in the small cemetery on the hill and covered him with stones. Come spring, they'd dig proper. But winter didn't wait for ceremony. The wind blew cold off the mountains, the smell of pine and snow. Reverend Price said words over the grave. Caleb barely heard them. Eliza stood beside his mother, supporting her. The two women held each other up, grief shared. When it was done, Caleb carried his mother back to the cabin. She weighed nothing, like carrying a bird. That night, she asked to speak to him alone. Eliza stepped outside. Through the window, Caleb saw her standing in the snow, arms wrapped around herself. His mother gripped his hand. Her fingers were cold. "Sit with me," she whispered. He pulled the chair close. "I need to tell you something." Her voice was weak but clear. About the letters. About Eliza. Mama, you don't have to. I do, she coughed. The sound was brittle. Before I go, you need to understand. Caleb waited. When your brother died, a piece of your father died too, and a piece of me. Her eyes filled. We tried to hide it, tried to be strong for you, but grief has a way of showing itself. In silence, in distance. He remembered. The empty chairs, the conversations that stopped when he entered a room. You felt it, she said. Felt like we loved him more, and maybe we did grieve him louder, but love isn't measured in noise, Caleb. It's measured in staying. You stayed, he said, but you left. Her voice broke. You left because you thought we didn't want you, and we let you go because we didn't know how to tell you we needed you. Tears ran down her weathered face. So when you kept leaving, kept choosing the mountains over us, I got desperate. I couldn't watch you die alone up there. Couldn't bury another son. She gripped his hand harder. I wrote those letters because I couldn't let you slip away. I was wrong to lie, but I wasn't wrong to save you. Caleb's vision blurred. She's good, Caleb. Eliza. She's strong and kind, and she chose to stay when she could have left. She chose us. Chose you, even though you gave her nothing but suspicion. His mother's voice dropped to a whisper. Don't lose her to pride. She's the family you chose by coming home. Outside, the wind picked up. The cabin creaked. His mother closed her eyes. I'm so tired, son. Rest, Mama. Tell her I'm sorry, for the lies, for putting her in the middle of our mess. I will. And Caleb? Her eyes opened one last time. The ring, your grandmother's. It's yours to give. Don't wait too long. She fell asleep. Caleb sat with her until dawn. She didn't wake again. The second funeral was 3 days later. They laid her beside his father. The stones made a small cairn, marking where 2 lives had ended and a new one had to begin. Caleb stood at the grave long after everyone left. The smell of turned earth was faint under the snow. Spring was coming. He could feel it in the air. Behind him, footsteps. Eliza. She didn't speak, just stood beside him. I'm sorry, he said finally. For what? For everything, for doubting you, for making this harder than it had to be. You had reason to doubt. No. He turned to her. I had fear. That's not the same thing. Her eyes were red from crying. She'd wept for his parents like they were her own. They loved you, she said. Your mother talked about you every day, about the way you used to catch frogs as a boy, about how you'd sneak bread to the horses, about how you sang while you worked, before your brother died. Caleb's chest tightened. She wanted you to know that the grief didn't erase the love. Before he could respond, hooves sounded on the trail. They both turned. A buggy, black and polished. Garrett Huxley. Caleb's jaw clenched. Huxley climbed down. He was followed by another man, thin, bespectacled, carrying a leather satchel. Mr. Thornton. Huxley's voice was professionally sympathetic. My condolences on your loss. What do you want? Business, I'm afraid. Doesn't stop for grief. Huxley gestured to the other man. This is County Clerk Morrison. We're here to file a water rights claim. Water rights. The creek that runs through your property. Territorial survey shows it originates on federal land, which means access is subject to review. Huxley pulled papers from his coat. We're filing a claim for Montana Central Railroad. Pending review, your use of creek water is suspended. You can't do that? Actually, I can. It's all legal. Huxley's smile was thin. Unless you'd like to sell. Still offering $1,200. Save yourself the legal trouble. The clerk pulled out a hammer and a notice. He walked to the general store porch and nailed it to the post. The sound echoed, sharp cracks that split the cold air. Caleb walked over, read the notice. Public timber auction, Thornton claim, 160 acres. April 28, 1887, all bids welcome. 2 days before the homestead deadline. Thought you might want to sell your timber before the land dispute complicates things, Huxley said. Of course, Montana Central would be happy to make an offer. Fair market value. He tipped his hat and climbed back into the buggy. The clerk followed. They rode away, leaving Caleb standing in front of the notice. Eliza came up beside him. He's forcing your hand, she said. I know. If you sell the timber to him, you get the $20, but he'll lowball the price. You'll barely make the deadline. And if I refuse, then we hold a public auction. Let the town decide. Let them see what he's doing. Her voice was steady. But that means trusting them. Trusting that they'll choose right. Caleb looked at the notice. At the date, April 28th, 2 days before everything ended or began. April 28th came with unexpected warmth. The sun rose bright and clear. Snow melted in the night, leaving mud and patches of brown grass. Water dripped from every roof. The smell of wet earth filled the air, rich and alive. Spring was breaking through. Caleb stood outside the cabin at dawn. He held Old Temperance in his hands, the axe his father had wielded for 40 years, the axe Eliza had used to keep them alive through winter. He ran his thumb over the worn handle, smooth where countless hands had gripped it, his grandfather's, his father's, his own, and now hers. Behind him, the door opened. Eliza stepped out. She'd pinned her hair up, wore her best dress, patched but clean. In her hands, the ledger. "Ready?" she asked. "No." He met her eyes. "But we're going anyway." They rode to town together. The trail was soft with mud. The horses' hooves made sucking sounds with each step. Birds sang in the pines. Early robins returned from wherever they'd spent the winter. Promise Creek was crowded when they arrived. Half the county had turned out. People clustered on the general store porch, in the street, outside the saloon. The smell of coffee and tobacco drifted on the warming air. Judge Keats stood on the porch, beside a small podium someone had dragged out. An auctioneer's gavel lay ready. Garrett Huxley waited near his buggy. Polished and composed, 2 men stood with him. Railroad representatives by the look of their suits. Caleb dismounted, helped Eliza down. Whispers rippled through the crowd. "That's her. The widow who took over. Heard she's got the deed. Heard he's going to contest it." Caleb carried the axe openly, let them see it. Judge Keats banged the gavel. The sound cracked sharp. "We're here for a timber auction," the judge announced. "Legal and witnessed. Thornton claim 160 acres, timber rights for spring cutting." He nodded to Caleb. Caleb stepped forward. The crowd parted. "My father cut this timber before he died," Caleb said. His voice carried across the square. "Fair value's about $500, more if the buyer's honest," murmurs. "But we only need 20. Eliza's voice was quiet, but in the silence, everyone heard. She held up the ledger. $20 to meet the homestead requirement, $480 in documented improvements. 20 more makes $500. By April 30th, the land is legally ours." "Ours?" Someone from the crowd. "Thought it was his land." "It's ours," Caleb said. He looked at Eliza. "My parents signed the deed to her as marriage settlement. If I honor that, we build together. If I don't—" He left it hanging. Judge Keats banged the gavel again. "Let's have bids. Who'll start?" Garrett Huxley stepped forward. $1,200, he said, clear and loud. "For the timber rights and the full land claim. Cash today." The crowd gasped. $1,200, more money than most of them would see in 5 years. Caleb felt every eye on him. Huxley smiled. "That's freedom, Mr. Thornton. From debt, from struggle, from having to fight for land that's fought you all your life." "That's a generous offer," someone called out. "Very generous," another voice agreed. Eliza stood very still. Her face was pale, but composed. Judge Keats looked at Caleb. "Do you accept?" Caleb's hands tightened on the axe handle. He thought of his father's words. Land means nothing without family to keep it. He thought of his mother. She's the family you chose by coming home. He thought of Eliza, 3 months alone with 2 dying strangers, choosing to stay when any sane person would have run. "No," he said. The word fell like a stone. Huxley's smile faded. "No?" "No." Caleb turned to the crowd. "I'm selling the timber to Jacobson's mill. Local buyer, fair price, $520. A man pushed forward. Jacobson, who ran the lumber mill south of town. "I'll pay that, and glad to." Caleb nodded. Then he walked to Eliza. In front of the entire town, he held out Old Temperance. "This axe belonged to my grandfather, then my father, then me." His voice was steady. "This woman used it to keep my parents alive, to build what I couldn't, to stay when she had every reason to leave." He placed the axe in her hands. $480 of improvements she made. I'm here to finish it with 20 more. This land is ours, together. Not mine, not hers, ours." The crowd was silent. Eliza's eyes filled with tears. "But," Huxley stepped forward, "the water rights claim, the survey—" Judge Keats cut him off. "About that." The judge pulled papers from his coat. "Spent the last week reviewing territorial records. That survey stake you planted? On federal land, yes. But the original homestead claim predates territorial water law. Thornton family has grandfathered rights. Huxley's face went white. Furthermore, the judge continued, his voice hard, I've documented 7 homesteads you've purchased in the last 18 months. Combined investment $4,000. Combined improvements 0. You're speculating, Mr. Huxley, using homestead law for profit, not settlement. That's fraud. Gasps from the crowd. I've filed a report with the territorial governor. Your water rights claim is denied. Your authority to purchase homesteads in this county is suspended pending investigation. The judge banged the gavel. Timber sale approved. Jacobson's Mill, $520, witnessed and legal. Huxley's jaw worked. His face flushed red. This isn't over. Yes, it is. Reverend Price stepped forward. We all see what you are now, a speculator, a fraud. You're not welcome here. Others nodded. The crowd closed ranks. Huxley climbed into his buggy. His representatives followed. They rode out of town in silence, leaving only dust. Judge Keats smiled. Now then, I believe there's the matter of a marriage to settle. He looked at Caleb and Eliza. Unless you've got objections? Caleb looked at Eliza. She stood holding the axe, tears on her cheeks, surrounded by people who'd finally chosen to see her. No objections, Caleb said. Then let's make it legal. The judge pulled out his book. On the church steps, with the whole town watching, they spoke their vows. The marriage certificate was simple. Just their names and the date, witnessed by Judge Keats and Reverend Price. Nothing fancy, but it was legal and binding. Caleb signed first. His hand shook slightly. Then Eliza. Her script was neat, careful. The judge pressed his seal into hot wax. The smell of burning resin filled the air, sharp and clean. By the authority vested in me by Montana Territory, the judge said, I pronounce you husband and wife. The crowd on the church steps erupted, not in cheers exactly, more like a collective exhale. Relief that the right thing had finally been done. Women came forward with gifts, preserves in jars, fresh bread wrapped in cloth, a quilt that had been started weeks ago when they'd first heard about the widow at the Thornton place. They'd finished it last night, sitting together by lamplight. The same women who'd brought Eliza food in February, who'd watched and judged and finally decided she'd earned her place. We're sorry we doubted, one woman said, older, gray-haired. You proved yourself 10 times over. Eliza took the quilt, held it like something precious. Thank you, she whispered. Jacobson pushed through with a leather pouch, heavy with coin. $520, counted and witnessed. Caleb took it. The weight felt right. Part of that's yours, he said to Eliza. Part of it's ours, she corrected. He smiled. First real smile in weeks. They rode back to the ranch in afternoon light. The sun was warm on their shoulders, the smell of pine and wet earth, everything thawing, coming back to life. At the cabin, they worked together. Eliza opened the ledger to the last page. She dipped the pen in ink. The scratch of nib on paper was the only sound. April 28, 1887. Timber sale, Jacobson's Mill. $520 total improvements. $500 balance, $20 surplus. She paused, then added one more line. Status, paid in full, partnership sealed. She closed the book, set the pen down. Caleb reached into his pocket, drew out the ring, gold worn thin from 50 years on his mother's hand. She wanted you to have this, he said. Told me before she died. Eliza's eyes filled. He took her hand, slipped the ring on her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting. I'm sorry, he said, for how I treated you, for doubting when I should have trusted. You had reason to be angry. Anger's easy. Trust is hard. He held her hand in both of his. But I'm asking you now, will you build this with me, not as my father's choice, as mine? Yes, she said simply. They stood together in the cabin their family had built. Outside, the sound of water running in the creek, ice broken, spring finally here. That night, they opened the tin box one last time. Inside, the old deeds, the note from his father, and now 2 new documents, the marriage certificate, the completed homestead filing that Judge Keats had signed and sealed. Caleb added his grandmother's ring box, empty now, a marker of what had been passed on. Eliza placed her widow's certificate inside. The past laid to rest. They buried the box under the hearthstone again, fitted the stone back into place, the sound of rock settling against rock. Solid, permanent. When we're gone, Eliza said, someone will find this. They'll know our story. They'll know we chose each other, Caleb said. The next morning was April 30th, deadline day. They woke before dawn. The air was soft, warmer than it had been in months. Through the window, the first hint of green showed in the meadow grass. Caleb carried seed to the field. Oats and barley, saved from last year. Eliza walked beside him with the hand seeder. They worked in silence. The rhythm of it. Scatter and cover, scatter and cover. The smell of turned earth rose around them, rich and dark, full of promise. By midday, the first field was planted. They stood at the edge, looking at the fresh-turned rows. Nothing to see yet, just dirt and faith. Think it'll grow? Eliza asked. It'll grow. Caleb put his arm around her shoulders. We'll make sure of it. That afternoon, a rider came. County clerk from Helena. He dismounted, carrying papers in a leather case. Come to file the completion, he said. Judge Keats sent word. They showed him the ledger, the receipts, the marriage certificate. He examined everything with a careful eye, made notes, stamped each page. Thornton claim, 160 acres, improvements verified at $500, marriage settlement recognized. He looked up. Deed filed in both names, Thornton and Thornton, equal partners. He handed them the new deed. Caleb read it. There, in official script, Caleb and Eliza Thornton, 160 acres, surveyed and registered April 30th, 1887. It's done, the clerk said. Land's yours, legal and clear. After he left, they sat on the porch. 2 chairs side by side. Caleb had built the second one that morning, made it to match his own. The sun slanted low through the pines, golden light that made everything soft. Eliza rested her head on his shoulder. Your mother would be proud, she said. She is. Caleb looked at the graves on the hill, 2 cairns of stone against the sky. They both are. Inside the cabin, old Temperance hung above the door. That evening, Caleb had taken his knife and carved into the handle. Slow, careful work. 2 names now, Caleb Thornton, Eliza Thornton. The axe belonged to both of them, just like the land, just like the future. May came soft and green. Word reached them through Reverend Price. Garrett Huxley had been transferred east. Montana Central Railroad had severed ties after the territorial investigation. The 7 homesteads he'd purchased were being returned to the families who'd sold them. Restitution and apology. The Reverend stood on their porch, hat in his hands. Thought you'd want to know, he said. Justice took its time, but it came. It usually does, Caleb said. After the Reverend left, Caleb and Eliza walked the property line, checking fences, planning summer work, the kind of quiet labor that builds a life. The creek ran clear and cold, no survey stakes, just water following the path it had followed for 1,000 years. In the meadow, the first green shoots pushed through, barley reaching for sunlight. They stood together, watching it grow. You know what I think? Eliza said. What? I think your mother knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't forge those letters because she was desperate. She did it because she saw what you couldn't. What's that? That you needed someone who wouldn't wait for you to be ready. Someone who'd just show up and start building. Eliza smiled. Someone stubborn enough to match you. Caleb laughed. First real laugh since he'd come home. She was a wise woman. She was. They walked back to the cabin as evening fell. Smoke rose from the chimney. Chickens settled in their coop. The horse nickered softly in the barn, everything in its place. Inside, Eliza made coffee, strong and black, the way Caleb liked it, the way she'd learned from his mother's letters. They sat at the table. The ledger lay closed, no more entries needed. Through the window, the last light touched the mountains, purple and gold. Tomorrow we start the garden, Eliza said. Vegetables for winter. And I'll cut timber for the new barn, Caleb added. Need more room if we're going to expand. Expand? Cattle, maybe 20 head to start, build slow and steady. She smiled, slow and steady. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind of silence that comes from understanding, from partnership earned through winter and sealed in spring. Outside, the world turned soft with twilight. Inside, 2 people who'd been strangers 4 months ago sat together, building a future from shared work and shared faith. The land stretched around them, 160 acres, hard-won and legally theirs. But more than that, it was home. And home, they'd learned, wasn't about who owned what. It was about who stayed, who showed up, who chose each other when the storm came. The tin box under the hearthstone held their story now. Letters and deeds and certificates. Proof that family wasn't always blood. Sometimes it was choice. And sometimes choice was stronger than blood. The mountains stood watch as they always had, silent witnesses to human struggle and human triumph, to loss and redemption, to the slow, steady work of building something that lasts. Come morning, they'd wake and do it all again. Plant, build, mend, grow together the way it was always meant to be. Folks in Promise Creek still talk about that auction. Some said Caleb Thornton was a fool to turn down $1,200. That kind of money could have set a man up somewhere easier, somewhere flat where the land didn't fight back every season. Others said he was the first man smart enough to know what he had. Truth is, a man can own land his whole life and never feel at home on it, can work it and bleed for it and still walk around like a stranger. Because ownership isn't the same as belonging. And belonging, real belonging, only comes when you stop asking what the land can give you and start asking what you can give to it and to the people standing beside you. Caleb's parents knew that, took them a lifetime to learn it, but they learned it true. And when they saw their son walking the same lonely path they'd walked, they did the only thing desperate love knows how to do. They brought him someone who wouldn't wait for permission, someone who'd just show up and start building. Some folks called it scheming, called Ruth Thornton a meddling old woman who couldn't let her son make his own choices, but those folks never sat up 3 nights with someone who's dying, never watched someone you love slip away while you're helpless to stop it, never understood that sometimes love has to be loud and inconvenient and even a little bit dishonest to save someone from their own pride. Ruth Thornton wrote those letters because she'd lost one son to death and couldn't bear to lose another to loneliness. And Eliza Pemberton answered them because she understood something most people spend their whole lives learning, that being needed is sometimes the only thing that keeps a person alive. The railroad moved its route south 2 years later. Garrett Huxley's schemes came to nothing. The land he'd bought sat empty until families moved in and worked it proper, the way land's supposed to be worked. Judge Marion Keats retired in 1890, spent his last years fishing that same creek where Caleb found the survey stakes. Said the water tasted better knowing it ran free. Caleb and Eliza had 4 children, 3 boys and a girl, raised them on stories about grandparents they never met but came to know through the tales, about a grandmother who loved hard enough to bend the truth, about a grandfather who understood that land without family was just dirt and rocks. The cabin's still there, though it's been added onto. Barn, too. The tin box under the hearthstone got buried deeper when they laid new stones, but the family knows it's there. Sometimes the grandchildren ask to hear about what's inside, and when they do, someone always pulls out Old Temperance. The axe that's been passed down now for 4 generations, the one with 2 names carved in the handle. They run their fingers over those carved letters. Caleb and Eliza, equal partners, equal weight, and they understand what their great-great-grandparents learned the hard way. That inheritance isn't about who gets what when someone dies. It's about who shows up when someone's dying, who stays when staying is hard, who chooses to build when it would be easier to walk away. The mountains above Promise Creek don't care about deeds or titles or who signed what paper when. They've watched 1,000 families come and go, watched land change hands and hearts change minds, but every now and then they witness something worth remembering. 2 people who started as strangers, who came together through desperation and stayed together through choice, who learned that family isn't always the one you're born into. Sometimes it's the one you build, log by log, season by season, choice by choice. The land's still there, 160 acres of Montana's stubborn earth, still hard, still beautiful, still teaching the same lessons it taught Caleb and Eliza, that pride is expensive, that partnership is worth more than ownership, and that sometimes the best inheritance isn't land or money or even blood. It's the example of 2 people who figured out how to stand together when the world tried to push them apart. Come spring, when the circuit judge's grandchildren visit Promise Creek, they always ask about the mountain man and the widow who fed his parents. And the old folks tell them, not as a fairy tale, not as a romance, but as the truth. A story about what happens when you stop running from the people who need you, when you stop measuring love by what you lose and start measuring it by what you're willing to build, the kind of story that sticks with you, that changes how you see your own choices, the kind that makes you wonder, when your own storm comes, who you'll choose to stand beside and whether you'll have the courage to stay.